Good evening, everyone. Let's just take like 5 minutes to wait for others to join. Okay. Good evening, everyone, once again. So we'll just continue and others will be joining us as we proceed. I'll be sharing my screen. So today, we want to start using Node.js. So what we've been doing before was just getting ourselves familiar with JavaScript, and today we want to run JavaScript outside the browser, right? So, and what are we going to use for running JavaScript outside the browser? Oh, so what are we going to use for running JavaScript outside the browser? We'll use Node.js. So the first thing we want to do is to download Node.js. If you go to nodejs.org, it will take you to the official website of Node.js. Click on Get Node.js. You select the latest version, which is the current. Select your OS. I'm using Mac OS. We want to use npm with npm, right? And download. So it is going to download the installer. Okay, so it is done downloading. Let's open. I have it. I have it installed already, but let me just open it. So this is the installer. You continue. You want to read the license agreement. Continue. Agree. Installation tab. Just proceed. And yes, the package has been installed. Node.js version 25, npm version 11. Make sure you make sure that this is your part. I think that should be done automatically. So yeah, I want to delete the installer. Move to trash. So how do we create a Node.js project? Let's go to the documentation. For every framework, for every library you want to use as a developer, you can always visit the docs, right? Let's go to the documentation. Um, okay, example usage. So the first thing we want to do is to create a server. Let's create a new project. Let me just create a new folder here. It's not here. Okay, absent. So I'm starting a new Windows on VS Code, right? This is a new window, and I'm dragging the folder I created to it. Oh, let me just say open. Open a folder. Command O. I want to go to desktop, type Node.js, and yes, trust. Yeah. So the first thing we want to do, let's create our first file. Let's call it index.js. Right. So from the documentation here, we see first thing we have is creating an HTTP variable, a constant. So say constant. To say constant, HTTP is require node HTTP, right? We want to define our host name is 127, sorry, 0.0.0.1. So this address, this IP address, it means your local host. That's your local system, right? I can as well just come here. I can as well just come here and say localhost. But for now, let's use what we have on the docs. So wherever you see this address, you know it means the local system. And then port. Port is 3000. So what does port mean? My system has many applications that are installed at the moment. And if we want to communicate with one application that is running, it has to go through one port, right? I can say this is my IP, and this port 3000 should go to Dive Node.js backend, right? So whenever I make a request to this address, it will go to Dive Node.js backend. I can say, okay, on this same system, when someone make a request to port 3001, you should go to dive React JS front end. Are you getting me? So port is just like knowing which application to route the request to. So we want our application to use port 3000, and then we want to create the server, which is the environment our JavaScript code will be running on. So let's say server is what? HTTP dot create server, right? HTTP is an object. And where is this object getting from? From here. So this would return an object that would be assigned to this variable. And inside that object, we have the create server method here. If we click on it, control click, it will give us it will take us to where the actual code is. You see, library, cache, TypeScript, blah blah blah, node modules. So yeah, create server, right? This create server will receive a callback function. And don't forget, I said a callback function looks like this, right? So a callback function. This callback function would also receive this callback function would also receive two parameters, which is the request and the response, right? The request and the response. Are you getting me? So what should happen inside this function? We want to set the status code of our request to 200. Set the header to content type. Am I correct? Yes, I am. Text plain. Right. What else? Then we want to send our response. Respondents. Let me just give these guys their correct name. Requests and response. Response. So we say response dot status code, response dot header, set header, and the response dot end. So it is going to end with hello world. Right? So this is our server. We have our port declaration here. Just as a variable. These two variables are not used. They are just here, right? If you notice, we've not used them anywhere. It says host name is declared, but its value is never used, and also the port. So how do we make this application? How do we make this server listen to this port? Whenever there's a request to this port, you have to attend to that request. So we can come here and say server.listen. Listen to what port? So this listing method is going to receive, I think, 3 arguments. The first is the port, which is a number, right? The second is an host name, which is a string. And finally, we can pass in the callback that would run after the connection, I think. So what we can do, we can come here and say the port. Our port is 3000. Port is 3000. Our host name is the local host that we set here. And then the callback function that would be triggered when the connection is successful. So we can log to the console. Don't forget we have console.log server running at HTTP. Let me just copy all this. Server running at HTTP. This is the host name and then the port. So this is how an IP and the port is usually looks like. Let's say my IP is, what's it called? My IP is this, and I say 30,000, and I say 3,000. So whenever you see something like this, you know, if you remove this this um, this guy between them, what you have in the left hand side is the IP, and what we have here is the port. So if you say google.com is always on the server. Okay, the google.com is a domain, right? And it is always pointing to a server. Each server has their own unique IP address. So let's say I can have a UPS server somewhere, UPS server somewhere that will have an IP of 128 points, maybe 030 something something. So let's assume this is the IP of this our server. So if we want to point google.com to this server, we'll just say google.com should go to this this server. So now google.com knows that it is going to this UPS server. But it is possible that this UPS server has many applications that are installed and running. So how do we tell it which application to use? So let's say we have this our index.js in the UPS server, right? This is supposed to be VPS. In the VPS server, right? And we are listening to port 3000. We can just say google.com should go to so IP, and the port is 3000. Are you getting it? So when you see an address like this, don't forget I said local host. This means local host, and then this is the port. So when you see an address like this, you see it means route this request to this same system that you are on, that this application is running on, right? Route this request to the same system this code is running on, and then on port 3000. Are you getting me? So if I come to my browser and say, let me say localhost 3000, yes, you can see it is telling me the site cannot be reached because actually there's nothing on the port 3000. So how do I start this index.js? You know, our usual way was to create an index.html file. That's if we want to run it on the browser. But this time we are not running on the browser, we want to run it in this system. So we'll open our terminal. So terminal is where you run some commands. And the first command we are going to run is say node index.js. And what this command means is that Node.js, we want to use Node.js to execute this file, this index.js file. And if I press enter, you can see we now have this console.log here, server running at HTTP, the IP address, and the port, right? And if you notice now, anything we are logging to the console will be logged on the terminal here, on the terminal console, instead of the browser. So if I come here and refresh, you can see I now have hello world that I had here. Are you getting me now? I now have the hello world that I had, that I was sending here. Let's say, welcome to Dive Backend. Backend. Yeah. Okay, so after doing this, we want to terminate our server, run the server again, and refresh. You see that? So any change you made would have to terminate and restart again. So yes, that is that about that. So if you notice now, we are doing something here. We are saying response.status code is 200. Where is 200 coming from? What does it mean? We don't know. Response.set header. What does this even mean? We don't know. And these two, we are not sure. So let me explain. In the internet, right? When you are making a request, when you open it, when you search for something, this thing that I just searched is making a request to the Google server, right? And if that request is successful, Google will return back the response. So here we have the request and the response. If the request is successful, Google will return back the Even if it's not successful, it will still send back the response, right? So it is now the status code of the response that would tell the browser or whoever is on the client side, whoever is expecting the response, that okay, oh, this is the status code of this response, and that means that status code this 200 represents that the request was successful. Okay, so if you see 200, you know that okay, this request was successful and we are good to go. So we have other status codes as well. HTTP status codes. So we have very good. I think I will love an image. Oh yeah, should be more. Just hold on. Yeah, very good. I believe everyone can see this. So these are the status code we have. We have in the 100 category, we have the 200 category, we have the 300 category, 400 categories, and the 500 categories. So I'll explain everything one by one. This 100 is just like telling the what's it called, the server, the client, that okay, we got this request, we are still doing something on it, right? Still wait for further response. Are you getting me? So this 200, anything above 200, less than 300, anything within the two, if the number starts with 2, it means the request was successful. Are you getting me? So 200 means, so 200 means the request was successful. It was okay, everything works perfectly. 201 means created, which means okay, you sent a request that the backend should create something for you and it has been created, right? 202 means okay, we accepted this request, but we are processing it in the background. Are you getting me? 203 is non-authoritative information. Not authoritative information. I've not really come across this. And the 204 is no content. If you send a request without any content, that's the 204. It's still successful, just that we don't have anything to respond back with. 205 is reset content. Most likely when you have the content cached on the front end and you get 205, it's like reset the one you have in the front end and use this. Partial content is maybe half of the content. Multi-status already reported. I think this is for when you are sending the same request. I'm used, 226 is I'm used. So majorly, the request in the 200 category are successful responses. If your response is coming back with something within the range of 200 to 300, 200 to 201, 202, to something, it means the request was successful. However, if you are getting something around 300, it means there was a redirection. Are you getting me? Let's say you visited, let's say, let's do something, hosting company. Popular hosting companies, okay. I'm expecting something like I'm hard. Okay, when you see a 300 response, it means the request was redirected. So normal 300 is multiple choices. Let's say the system has multiple servers and it just redirected to another one. And then moved permanently is, let's say, this site is no longer in use, and then your request has been moved to the new site. So when the browser receives this 301 response, it will know that this site is no longer used, and this is the new site. So when next you try to make a request to the server, to that site that has been abandoned, the browser knows this site has been abandoned and this is the new one. So it will just redirect you directly to the new one instead of making a request to the previous server first. And then 302 is found. 303 is serial others, 304 not modified. Anything around the 300 context is redirection. So for the 400, we have the client-side errors. So these client-side errors means that the user is doing something wrong on their end. Are you getting me? Let's say they are supposed to input their phone number, and in the phone number field, they are putting their email. That means the user is doing something wrong on their end. So you use 400 in that context. So 400 particularly is for bad requests. 401 is unauthorized, so you are not authorized to access this thing you are trying to access. 402 is payments required. The service you are trying to use requires payments. 404 is forbidden. Sorry, 403 is forbidden. 404 is not found. So not found is let's say not found is, let's say they are trying to make a request to a route that is not found, or they are trying to get a file that doesn't exist to return 404. 405 is method not allowed. We've not talked about method yet. 405 is method not allowed. 406 is not accepted. 407 proxy authentication is required. 408 is request timeout. 409 is conflicts. 410 is gone. Then it's required. 412. Majorly, you come across these guys. 1, 2. This one off tone. This one off tone. This one too off tone. This one off tone. This one mostly during development. And yeah, you come across the rest too, but those are the most popular ones. And this one, too many requests. 429, you get too many requests. 422, you can get 422 sometimes for processed entity. But any request that is responding with a 400 response is is a client error, and you have to tell the client you are doing this or that wrong. But for server errors, for 500 and above, it means server error. And this type of errors are not supposed to be displayed to the users, right? So when you make a request to a server, to an API, when you make an API request and it's returning a 400, something in the 400 response to you, you know, okay, this is a client issue. And you can tell the client what is going on, right? You can display the error message you got to the client. But in a case where we are getting a 500 response, where the response is 500, that is to tell whoever is making that request that, okay, oh, we got this request, but something is going on our end, something is going wrong on our own end. And in this context, you don't display the error messages to the user, right? Users should not be aware of the actual thing that's going on. You can just have a generic error message that will be displayed to the user. Let's say for 500, you can say, okay, there's an internal server error on our end. We are looking into that, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we have 501 not implemented, 502 bad gateway, 503 service unavailable, 504 gateway timeout, 505 HTTP version not supported, 507 insufficient storage, 508 loop detected. That's when there's an infinite loop. 510 not extended, 511 network authentication required. So anything in the 500 context is sensitive. You don't want to display to the user. Client errors you can display to the user. 200 they are successful requests. 302 are successful, but before they got successful, there was a redirection. All right, so that is that about status code. So in this case, back to our code base. In this case, we are returning a 200 response that tells this guy that, okay, your request was successful. If I inspect this page, come to the network tab, and then reload. You can see I have this, and the status is 200. Are you getting me? Which tells it that the request was successful. So if I change this to 500, oh, I think we'd rather throw an exception. But we'll come back to that. For now, we can just proceed with our 200. So for 200 is successful request. Let's load one site and see. Inspect. If you go to network, just refresh. You notice many of these guys are 200 successful. This was cancelled, and you have 304 for redirections, right? We have 404, which means not found. So yeah. Status code on the response is just a way for the client, for the person making the request to know what's happened, right? And then the content header. So when you are making the request, when you are sending a request, there's always an header. There's always an header and a body. Let me compose tomorrow. Okay. So this is Postman. It is used for testing API. If I come here, copy this our URL and send and put it here, then send. You can see I have the what's it called? I have the response here. This is my request and this is my response, right? The top here is my request. Here is my response. So in the request, I have some default headers, the host, the user agent, the accept, you can accept anything, accept encoding, connection, keep alive, right? And then in the response header, so this is the response body. In your request, you have your request header, the request body. Also in the response, you have the response header and the response body, right? So this is the response body. And in the header, you notice we have content type is text plain, which is what we added here, right? So we can change this to application JSON, because when you are making API requests or you are dealing with API application JSON, you'll be working with JSON. So this is telling whoever is making this request that the response we are sending back to you is in JSON, right? And how do we send JSON? I think let's say constant response data should be status is true. Sorry, success is true. And then message can be welcome to Drive Africa. Welcome to Drive Backend, right? And I think we can just come here and say response data. If I'm correct, we should. Sorry, we'd have to restart our server. Send. I think we have an error. JSON encode. If I'm correct, just hold on. Okay, so we are going to encode this to JSON with JSON just stringify. Just stringify. So what we have here is an object, right? And if we want to convert it to JSON, this is how a JSON looks like. First of all, let me bring our objects. So this is our object, right? This is our object, but this is how a JSON looks like. They're also, the keys are in string. So this is a valid JSON file. So when we say JSON.stringify, it will just convert this to the example I just showed now. Let's restart our server. And you can see our response is now coming back in JSON, right? We have the header application.json and some other default headers as well. I hope I'm communicating with someone. All right. Okay, let's go back to the documentation we were working on. So we did this, and we confirmed this, right? I don't want us to go too deep into this. Let's see HTTP. Okay, so let's look at routing. Let's look at routing. Routing in the JS. Okay, so what is routing? When I made this request, this one that I made, I just made the request to our, what's it called? Our URL. And I think I'm missing something, right? In the code base, the example I made was this IP address, not localhost. Just to prove to you that this localhost and the IP address are the same thing, I'm going to change it from localhost to the IP. Send. You should still have our response. Just to confirm to you that it actually does work, let me change this to something, just add one to it. And you see it is not taking forever. To still timeout, chat. But let me cancel. We don't have time to paste it. All right. That's about that. So as I was saying, if you notice now, the request I made, I just made it to our server. So what happens there is that it routes the request to our base parts, right? Which is this. When you visit any website, if I go to if I go to sinja.com, right? This page, this base part, this URL without any prefix, without any route path to it, that's the base part, like this. So if I now want to go to, let's say I want to go to the pricing, I can now say pricing. That's routing. So if I go to the pricing route, you can see there's pricing in front of this. It will take me to the pricing page. And if I maybe want to go to the authentication pages, let's see if they have that. My accounts, I'm already looking. So basically, you can have pricing, you can have something like this, auth login, which would handle login, and you can have something like auth register, which should also handle things like register. Yes. Yes, that's about the route. Okay, we'll still come back to routing. How do we go about that? Let's create a small route. And we already have HTTP in our application, right? And we already created a server, right? In the request, we can get the URL, Abby. So what we can do is to come here Whenever we get a request, we want to do what? We want to console.log request.url, right? We want to log the request to the URL. Sorry, we want to log the URL of the request to the console. And don't forget, we'd have to, what am I doing? Okay, I'll have to remove these guys. I'll just comment them out. Yeah, so we have that login. Don't forget, we'd have to restart our server. And let's go to Postman, send the request. The request was successful. And if you check our console, we have, what's this? So let me send again. It's too big. Okay, so you notice now that the request I sent here was showing this base part. If I now come here and say, let's say about, right, send, it will still be successful, and you can see I'm getting the URL of where I'm visiting, and that is how we would handle our routes. So we can come here and say, if our request.url is what is about, right, we want to say, what do we want to do? Just do everything we have here. Let me see if I can generate a Lorem Ipsum text here inside the paragraph. Yes. So I have one paragraph here. No, I don't have. So message of the request is request successful. And then we can have data, which inside the data we can have an object of about. Inside the paragraph, yes. So we have the response data here. And what we can do, we can say at the top of the page, let's have a response data variable that is not assigned yet. So here we won't be doing any assignment, and here too we won't be assigning. Sorry, we won't be creating a new variable, we'll just be assigning value to the existing one, right? So at the end of the day, we are sending our response in JSON string file. So let's do this. Let's go back to where our postman send the request. Everything still works. Everything doesn't work. Okay, so this is an if statement. This executed successfully, and then this too is executing. So what we should do is to say else. Well, as a matter of fact, let's say if request.url is this guy. Let's use adjective. Is our base part. This should be the data, right? I hope I'm correct. Okay. Right. Else, if it is not that one, but it is this one. If it is not the base part, but it is about, you should use this one. Is this too small for anyone? Is the font size too small? Are we all okay with this?
Yeah, the font size is a little bit small for us to see. Maybe if you can increase it a little bit, sir. Thank you.
How about now?
It's okay, sir.
Okay, so if the request is the base route, we have these guys, and if it is the about route, we have these guys. So yes, let me just send. Don't forget, we'd have to restart our server. Send, and our request works. The success is true. Message is request successful. It should be request successful, right? Don't forget to have to restart the server. So yes, and then we have, if I make a request to this place, it should work. Make a request to about, it should work, right? Now let's make a request to a route that doesn't exist. Let's say login. We have 200 response, but no data. And actually, we don't have that route. We only have this guy and this guy. So in that case, what we can do, we can say else. If you've checked every of these routes and they are not found, the status code of our requests should be 404, right? And 404 is not found. Don't forget, not found. So again, our response type, the type of the data we are sending back should be JSON, and then the response data. Success is false. The request was not successful, right? And then the message should be requested route could not be found, or is not found, or does not exist. Requested route does not exist. That's enough information you need. So we are removing data. And if I come here, send, sorry, we'd have to restart our server. Send. So we have false, and requested route does not exist, and our status code is 404 not found. So Postman was able to identify that 404 means not found, requested resource not found, right? But I have a little concern here. We are having to restart the server every time. So a way we can avoid that is to use node-mon. So if I come here, I've not talked about package. Let's not use it yet. So yeah, we've talked about routing. Another thing we can do is that let's add a login route, right? Let's say else if request.url is login, right? We want to perform some things, right? But before then, let's just come here and say login successful. And here some random data. Let's just say the user that logged in is ID of 1, name is Ayomide, and then name is Ayomide Michael, and an email is ayomide@divehq.org, right? And then the token, let's say the token that the person will use to make subsequent requests. You can just put some random numbers, random alphanumeric characters. And then if we come to login, sorry, we'll have to restart our server. Come to login. You can see our login is successful, right? Is it successful? Yes, it is successful. But whenever someone needs to log in, they would have to enter their email and password, right? Am I correct? Is that right? So how do we collect the email and password? I mentioned that this is my request. This here is my request, and this guy here is my response. And if you notice in the response, we have the body. That means in the request too, we can have the body, right? So let's do something. Let's say we want to send the body of JSON, right? This would, so before then, let's even come here and say, okay, before the body, before validation on the what's it called, on the code base. If you notice now, we've been sending get request. I was saying something about request type the other time. Request type. So we have a couple of request types. We have get, we have post, we have put, we have patch, we have delete, we have add, we have options, we have get w, post d. Are you serious? So these are the common ones, right? These are the ones we want to focus on. So what is a get request? Let me just pull up an image. HTTP request types. What's this notification doing here? Okay, HTTP request type. I'll have to work with an image. Yeah, this guy. So yes, a get request, which is what we've been using, retrieves data or resource from a specific URL. It is used to retrieve information without modifying it. So if you want to get something from a server, from an API, you use get, just like the name sounds. And then for post, post is to submit data or create a new resource in the server. It is used to send data to be processed by the server. It is often it often results in creation of a new resource on the server. So if your request requires you to send data to the server, you'd use a post request, right? Someone is raising his hand. AGK.
Yes, sir. Sorry to quickly. I wanted to ask that this Postman, all of a sudden, he started using Postman. I don't know what the function is, or do we also need to install Postman just like we installed Node.js? That's the question I wanted to ask before we start using it for our get, our post, and the rest.
Yes, you would have to install Postman. Sorry, I think I skipped that. So if you search for Postman, you see the official Postman website. You can you can just download it. Desktop, download the app for desktop app. You select your OS. I'm using Mac OS. I'm using Mac Intel. Okay, Mac Apple chip rather. So I download for Apple chip. And once it is downloaded, you continue just like we installed Node.js. You install it and you should have this interface that we are using, right?
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So like I was saying for requests, post request is if you want to submit a data to the if you want, or if you need to submit data to the API request you're making, if you require some data to be able to process what you want. And then put request is to update the existing resource with new data. It replaces the entire resource or create it if it doesn't exist. So put request would create it if it doesn't exist, and if it does exist, it will update the data. Are you getting me now? Delete, just like the name sounds, it deletes a specific resource from the data. Patch is very similar to put. Patch updates the existing resource with the provided data. Patch request does not create a new resource. It doesn't have the right, they are not to use patch request to create something. You can use put, but patch only works for updating. Patch only works for updating. And then for head, it retrieves only the header of a response. So only the header of the response, not the actual, it won't execute the logic, right? Just the header. It is used to check the status or headers of a resource without fetching the actual content. And yes, that is what it does. And then options, fetch or retrieve the allowed methods. So you want to know which methods are allowed for this route. These options, where's it? Options would get you that. Options request will get you that. The trace method echoes back and the received requests to the client. Do we have trace here? We don't have. Allowing clients to inspect and request. Okay, allowing client to inspect the request and see any modifications or addition made by intermediaries. It is mainly used for the diagnostic purposes, and then connects. But majorly, these are the ones you want to focus on. Get, post, put, delete, maybe patch are the ones you want to use. So back to our login flow. When someone wants to log in, they have to put in their email and password, and that means we have to use what requests. What request type are we supposed to use? Can someone help me?
I think post.
So we are supposed to use post requests, right? So which, because we want to send data to the backend, we want to use post, and in every post request you have your body. So here you can customize what your body would expect. Here we want to use raw JSON. So we use email. We are going to send email. Let's say the email is ayomide@divehq.org, right? Password. And then the password. Let's say the password is password, right? So we want to send this data to the backend so that it will check if we have this user, and if we have it, we should be able to log in. What am I doing here? Successful. Yeah. We should be able to log in. First of all, we've established that we are using a post request here. So that means we want to confirm that this request is to the login route, and hold on. First of all, we need to confirm how we are getting this request. I think request.method should be what we are looking for, right? So if I send this, you see I have post as the request method. So I can come here back to this login. So if our request URL is login and request.method is posts, is a post request, that is when you should run this logic. So that means that if you are making this request with a get request, you should get, into that. Okay, we'll have to restart our server. Yeah. You should get 404. You are getting 404. But in the real sense, 404 is not what you should be getting. According to our status code here, do we have it? We have it. Just hold on. Yeah, this guy. According to what we have here, we have 405, which is method not allowed. So 404 is route not found. But this time we have the route. But do we allow this method? So what we can do is to say, inside this if statement, we want to have another if statement. If statement for if request is post. Are you getting me? Which is the one we allow. So if the request is a post request, that is when you want to do these things. Yeah, I need this here. Okay, so if why is this thing not formatting now? Okay, I need to remove this. Yeah. So if the request is a post request, and do what we want, and else, if it is not, don't forget we have 405 for method not allowed. So we'll just copy it. We'll just copy it rather and say status code is 405. Is it successful? It is not. So what we can do, we can say so what we can do here, we can first of all remove this data. We are not sending back a data, right? So we can say this method is not supported for this route, right? I need to add a space here, add a space here. All right, so what we are doing here is that if the request is a post request, it is the only one we want to, that it is only a post request that we want to use. Any other one should just give us a request method not, I think method not allowed. Method not allowed. So what we should do is to, this is a get request at this send. Don't forget to have to restart our server. Where's the server? And then send. So you can see 405 method not allowed. Method get is not allowed, it's not supported for this route. So we will have to use a post request. Save. No, we are not saving. Send. So it was successful, right? So another thing we want to do is to say, in this our login, we've been able to establish that the request is a post request. Now we want to check. Let's say our user, let's say the user, constant user is this our user, right? Now we want to check our request body. How do we get our request body? If we say console.log request.body, I think I'm correct. Oh, yes, I'm not. Request.body, right? Let's restart our server. Let's remove this console.log that we have here, right? And then restart our server again. Send. So request.body is coming as undefined. Let's see if we are missing something. Post request in Node.js. Um,
Sir, we cannot hear you, sir.
Can you hear me now? Okay. We are trying to capture the body of our requests. First of all, let's do something. Let's just log the whole request to the console. Log the whole request to the console. Restart our server. Send the request again. So we have all these guys in our console. There's a lot here. If I search for Ayomide somewhere, I should know. So our body is not here. What we can do is to say let body be an empty string. Body be an empty string, right? Right, and then we can say request dot on data. So this should stream in chunk and expect a callback, which will receive the chunk. And what we want to do is to say body plus chunk. So let me do this in a way you understand. Body plus, yeah. So we want to log the body to the console. Again, we'll have to restart our server. I hope I'm not logging this whole request again. Okay, so I want to clear this. Restart our server again. Send the request again. We have undefined. It may seem as though I'm missing something. And I want us to touch this thing before moving to Express. Express is the guy that handles it perfectly. Okay, I think after the request is successful, our request has been gotten, not on hand, we can have console.log request.body. Let's restart our server again. Oh, yes. So I have one undefined, then another, which one is undefined? Let's comment this out and send our request again. Okay. Okay, so how we can resolve our body. So how we can resolve our body is that as the request is coming in, right, we have a body string. This is a very complex logic. We have the body string, which is an empty string, and as we are getting the request, we are adding the chunk. So chunk is like the whole body is being splitted into maybe 5. So each of those 5 we call them chunk. So we are adding them to the body. So at the end of the request, when we know that this request has been gotten successfully, we are logging the body to the console, right? So actually, it is inside this end that all these guys are supposed to be. That is when we are certain that we've gotten the whole request. Are you getting me now? So what we can do, I don't want us to move to Express yet, but what we can do is just find this. Let me see if we have something else to touch. Okay. We'll come back to login, right? Though we now have these guys, we have our emails and password in our console, but we'll have to come back to them because this logic, if we continue going this way, this will be too complex for beginner. So we'll come back to that. What do we want to do now? I was mentioning that we have to restart our server every time. I wanted to use node module the other time. So what is node module? If you notice now, I went to npm. And what is npm? It is so npm is node package manager. So let's say you are trying to build something, and instead of having to create all this overflow, just like we are doing here, instead of having to worry about creating them, someone did that already, right? All you just have to do is to bring the package to your own code and use what the person has built. So each programming language has their own package managers, but for JavaScript, it is npm for node package manager. So how do we install node? Okay, so the guy we want to install is nodemon. Nodemon. Is it nodemon we should install first or Express? I think we should go to Express. We should go to Express. So let's use Express. Nodemon is for restarting, simply monitor scripts for use during development of a Node.js app. So what this does is that whenever you say Ctrl S, it will automatically restart your server. Oh, that's not what we want to do now. Or should we? Let's just use it. Yeah. So to install a node package, a Node.js package, you run npm install the package name. Npm install the package name. So I have my server running here. If I don't want to terminate it, I can just create a new terminal here and say npm install nodemon. So if you notice now, it has created the packages.json for us. And inside the packages.json, we have the dependencies, which tells whoever is using this code base that this project depends on nodemon 3.1.11, right? So how we can use nodemon is to come here and say, no. So how we can use nodemon, actually we're supposed to install it globally. So when you install it globally, you're installing it on your system and not in the code base, not in the application level, but in your global system. So let me install it globally. Added 29 packages, blah, blah, blah. So how do we start a nodemon package? So instead of saying node index.js, so the way we are doing here, instead of saying node index.js, we can close this, and then we can say, let me clear this, we can say nodemon index.js, right? So we have some things in our terminal, nodemon 3.1.11. So we start at any time, enter rs, that's restarted, that's restart. Watching parts, it is watching all the files in our code base, and then watching extensions. These are the extensions it will. So if you update a file with any of these extensions, it will restart the server. So if I come here, press enter and save, You can see it has restarted. So with this, we don't have to always come back to the server to restart when we make an update. So if you notice, I did something at the top here. What I'm doing here is called importing. I'm importing a package into this code base, right? This is Node.js HTTP. Instead of me trying to create an HTTP instance from scratch, I'm using the one from Node.js, right? If you have another package, what package can we use? What package can we use? What package can we use? Let's use Chalk. So Chalk is for logging something to the terminal. So I can come here and say npm, just copy this command, npm install Chalk. I don't want us to restart our, I don't want us to close our server, so creating a new terminal, npm install Chalk, and has added two packages. So how do we use Chalk? It says imports. So what I can do, I can say constant Chalk is what's require Chalk. So we have Chalk. So we're this place that we are doing console.log body. First of all, let me make a request so you can see it. So this place that we are doing console.log body, I can just say chalk.blue. Is it blue? Okay. Chalk.blue body. Then send. We have an error. Blue is not a function. Let's see. I can see something like background color. Okay. So Chalk, this package Chalk that we are trying to use is ESM only, which means we can't use require like this. We have to use import Chalk from Chalk, just like this, right? And that is not going to work if I'm correct. You can see it is crashing. Let me just clear this console clear and start again. Let me even comment this out. So now that we are using, now that we are using imports from something, import something from something, we are shifting away from the require that we are using, right? And what we have to do is to come to our, what's it called? Our node modules. Our node modules. This is a JSON file. We want to add an attribute called type to the modules. So this is telling this application that everything we'll be doing will be based on modules. We are importing this from this module, importing that from this module, right? So we install this package, which we can also call a module, and we are importing Chalk from this module. So what we can also do is to also say import HTTP from, I think, node, if I'm correct. And Sorry, please give me a moment. I'll be back shortly. A moment, please.
Sir, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm back. Okay, so we are supposed to import HTTP from node HTTP, right? And okay, so you see the moment we saved, our server started. Now we have chop. What we can do with chop is to say console.log chop dot I think was it blue we were trying? Yes, body. Right, so we can send this request, and you can see what it is logging to the console now as a color. Let's do it. Let's do that here too. Let's say console.log console.log chalk and dots. Okay, yellow. Right. So we can now color things with the help of chalk. So instead of us having to write everything about coloring our terminal output, chalk handles that for us. And that about npm and installing packages. Let me see what else we can touch before we go. Um, I think this is all we need for now. We should be good. So in our next class, we'll start working with Express.js. Express.js, or we can just take a look at the documentation for now. Express.js is fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. So instead of us having to be doing if statements, if this route matches this one, if the method matches this is just what we have to do. App.get puts the route. We have access to the request and response, and we'll do whatever we want to do with that request. So in our next session, we'll be looking at Express.js. That will be all for today. And now I'll be taking questions. Does anyone have any question? Okay, AGK and we will proceed.
Okay, thank you very much for the class, sir. Really appreciate. My question I want to ask is that I wanted you to explain the logic of creating a backend that has a database. Say for instance, we have what they call it, where you input your email, username, and password, then you click a button to log in, and it now has to go to the database and check if the person's name is on the database or something. I just wanted you to just explain the logic for us, how it works. Now, I'm not saying you should write the code now, but just give us a brief explanation of how the logic goes from the backend through all this, how would I call it, then retrieve the data through post and everything, check whether there is the username and the password is correct, and you now officially log us into maybe the page that we are going to. Say for instance something like this, yes, that you just put on the screen. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, so when you put your email, I have an account. I think I should do. So when you put your email and click on this button, it sends a post request to the backend. I've not clicked on the button. I'm trying to bring these guys down. So that's okay. This is a request. So if I click on this button now, login, you can see there's a login request to the backend. This request, right? And let's see, it is a post request. If it responded with 201, it's supposed to be 200. But if you see the endpoint is onboarding login, right? Onboarding login. So once you send that request, if you send, okay. The route is onboarding login, right? And it sends the payload to the backend. Let me try with something else. I think we have logout here. Okay. Password. So if I click on this login, it sends a request to the backend, right? And it sends a post request. It sends 403 forbidden. The response was 403 forbidden, right? The payload is what we entered here, and the response is credentials incorrect. So what happens behind the scene is that when the backend receives the request, right, it checks the person that registered with this email. Does this user exist? So after getting that, first thing first, it is checking if the person with that email exists. It is not working with password yet, right? First thing it is doing, checking if the user exists. So if the user exists, it will get the user from the database and now compare the password. So the way I made this request now, that we are sending password as I think password here is password. On the database, it is not saved as password. It is hashed, right? So if the backend wants to know if the password is correct, it will hash this one too. This password that we are sending it will hash it to, and then compare the two hashes that they match. So after they match, it will now respond back with the user details and the token, just like I did here, just like we did here, and the token. Are you getting me? So when you are now logged in, after you've logged in, after you've logged in, you can see this is the user, right? And this is the token. Are you getting me? So after you've logged in, every other request you want to send to the backend, you have to attach this token. And it is the token the backend will use to know that, okay, this request belongs to so person. Right? So if you now check, After the request, we now have a route for uncompleted videos, which was this guy, these guys, right? If you check the header, the request header, this is the response header. The request header, there's a authorization header, which puts the token. So that is what we tell the backend that, okay, oh, this request that we got to, it is a GET request. But in the header, we have this guy, which tells the backender this request belongs to this user. So everything you are getting should be related to this particular user. Was I able to answer your question?
Yeah, yes, but what I wanted to find out was that is it pulling, is the username and now the email and the password, was it saved in a database that the backend has to go and retrieve and check before giving us access, authorizing us to now log in successfully?
Yes. So for every system you have the login, you're able to perform some actions. It always have a database. It is always connected to a database. And the database is either a relational database or non-relational database.
Okay, I get you now. I get you now. Yeah.
So a relational database is MySQL. A relational database is SQL. We have PostgreSQL, we have SQLite, we have MySQL, and then the non-relational database are maybe MongoDB. We'll still get to that place, but for now we are focusing on the basics. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. I know we'll get there. I just wanted to, that's why I said you just explain the logic, and which is what you've done for us now. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, Mr. Toib at the bio.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Um, my question is that I realized that last week we talked about Java. We continue with the JavaScript. So, but I was quite late today. So I want to ask if we already start the Node.js or you are just taking us through the environment, sir.
So what we did today is just getting ourselves familiar with how things work, right? How the Node.js works behind the scene, because the actual framework we'll be using is Express, which is built on top of Node.js. So you have to understand what is happening behind the scene. And that is why we have to go the route of using Node.js directly first, Node.js HTTP first.
All right, sir. Because as I was seeing it, that this thing is complex. So I don't know. You are just taking us.
Yeah, it is quite complex. That was why I didn't proceed with this body um, issue.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. The next person is Davis Ikeolua.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Um, my own is not really a question. Mine is more of like, yeah, it's a question actually. Actually, I'm kind of behind, like far behind the class, cause I was like I'm taking it slow, sha, something like that.
Okay. Do you have access to the LMS?
So I want to ask, if it's possible for like previous questions, like question. Hello, do you hear what I said, sir?
Can you please come again?
I said, is it possible for someone like me now, like I'm kind of behind in the class, so I want to ask that for like the next class, is it possible that I bring topics like, can I bring questions from previous topic that has been treated before, or I should just
Yes, you can bring questions from previous topics. So if you have
okay?
a video that you want to and you don't understand what exactly doing, you can just ask. You can just brush it up before proceeding.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, I think the next person is Lolani Femi.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Sir, please, when can we get the recording for today's class? And I think last week class too, sir.
Um, I think your class rep can follow up with Mr. Ishodua for it.
Okay, because I was not able to join last week class, so I just want to rewatch and check.
Yeah, she can follow up with Mr. Ishodua for it.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. Ask rep, go.
Okay, so it seems you don't have any other question. It was nice having you guys this evening. We'll meet again next week. Have a nice day. Or have a good night's rest. Bye.
And you too, sir.
Good night, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Good night.
Nice, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good night, sir.